Hustling, 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 hustling. Every day I'm hustling, 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 every day I'm.
And welcome to episode 3 of the Mash and Soul podcast. I'm your host, Soul, coming to you from sunny Southern California. And I'm joined by my co-host from God knows what the weather is like now, New York. How you doing, Mash?
I'm good, man. Just enjoying this football Saturday. How you doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. Yeah, just a lot of college football action going on right now. And, of course, it was another interesting week 2 of NFL football. And, of course, we had an interesting Thursday night game as well. How's your football weekend go in general? How's everything going?
Everything's good. Well, we're approaching the night games now in the college football. It's about 7:30 right now, so the night games are coming in. So we'll see. Nothing crazy. Besides, that Old Dominion game, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah. I mean, it's a good weekend. Good weekend so far.
Yeah, and it's definitely a little bit more of a tamer sports weekend in general. Next week, definitely going to ramp up quite a bit. So,
Right.
but this a little bit of a tame sports weekend.
Yeah,
but,
not a lot of big top 25 matchups, but there's still some good games on.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And same with the NFL. But yeah, so we'll get into that. We'll get into some basketball a little bit later in the podcast, and of course, basketball's our first time kind of touching on that, and we'll get into some college football a little bit later as well. But first, let's get straight into the NFL. So we had a Thursday night matchup, very interesting game as it turns out. It was the Browns and the Jets, and anytime you hear of the Cleveland Browns versus the Jets, the last thing you think of is excitement. The first thing you mostly think of is just kind of, bad franchises and quarterbacks in general is definitely not, quarterback play is definitely not something that you think to really harp on. But this game is really interesting, Mash. So obviously, as you know, Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback for the Jets. And Tyrod Taylor was coming in, of course, as starting quarterback for the Browns. And Baker Mayfield, who went one spot ahead of Sam Darnold, was on the bench. Tyrod Taylor ends up getting injured in the second quarter and was playing terrible football. And I don't necessarily think it was all his fault, but nevertheless, he ends up getting injured. Baker Mayfield comes in. They're down 14-0. And, unless you're living under a rock, the Browns come back and end up winning the game 21-17. And, of course, Baker comes down on that last drive and scores a touchdown. And, Cleveland goes wild. I think they had like this whole thing where they had a whole bunch of Bud Light, like these little places where they were pretty much opening up the lock and everyone was getting free Bud Light, and Cleveland was going crazy. But really interesting game. Was a lot of fun to see. What were your thoughts on that Thursday night game? I know you have you're pretty passionate about the quarterbacks, the rookie quarterbacks in general.
Well, it was a good game. There's a lot of things with this game because, up until this game, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, they were tied to each other. Everyone was saying, does Cleveland regret not taking Sam Darnold? And I've been pretty consistent being like, hey guys, slow down. We don't know what Baker Mayfield is yet. We don't know what Sam Darnold is. We don't know what any of these rookie quarterbacks is. It's just been a few games. But Baker looked really good. It's like he just went straight from Oklahoma to Cleveland with no hiccups. He looked really good. He looked like the number 1 pick. He looked like he deserved to be the number 1 pick. My only question is this, and I like Tyrod Taylor, but if Baker Mayfield is this good, why didn't Hugh Jackson start him earlier? Why was he not that? Why didn't he have? It seemed like he wanted to sit him out the whole season. Why doesn't he have a plan to play him, and why is he so adamant about it?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think he actually caught a lot of flack. Hugh Jackson, that is, cut a lot of flack after the game because they were like, well, first off, he wouldn't even declare Baker as a starter, which I think was a smart, prudent thing to do. But he, a lot of them were giving him flack because they're like, oh, look, like you should have started him from the beginning. What are you doing? You didn't know what you're doing. And, and obviously they're going crazy for Baker. And he's the type of guy, too, that can really attract, like, have a fan base get on the bandwagon and just go all in, right? Because he's just an exciting guy. He's eccentric. But, I think with this game, I think it's a perfect representation of why you can't jump to conclusions too quick. Because, I mean, look, if you guys saw the game when you were watching the Jets defense versus Tyrod Taylor, they were destroying him. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with game plan, right? They were game planning versus Tyrod Taylor and not Baker Mayfield. And the offense, to Tyrod Taylor's credit, I mean, he had no chance half the snaps. I mean, he was running for his life. There were broken down protection schemes where the Jets are just pretty much Hugh Jackson and the offense getting out coached, and Todd Haley, let's just be honest, that first 2 quarters. And when Baker Mayfield came in, it's harder because they're 2 different quarterbacks. So there wasn't a lot of game plan going in against Baker Mayfield. So I think people have to temper their expectations and what they think Baker Mayfield really is this quick. I mean, look, he was 17 for 23 for 201 yards for basically half. But with that being said, he did look good. He had you could tell his arms. And I think they were talking about it during the game as well. Like, his spiral is just different, right? When you look at different quarterbacks in the league who throw, he has a laser, man. And he can really throw the ball.
Well, yeah. So the thing about Tyrod Taylor is he may be the most inaccurate, mistake-free quarterback of all time. Like, no one is like makes less mistakes and is more inaccurate than Tyrod Taylor. I mean, it's crazy. I am a fan. Like, I root for him, but he's limited. And once Baker came in the game, I mean, everything changed. The whole team changed, right? The culture changed. And I think this performance was better than any of Sam Darnold's 3 performances this year either. And that's okay if Baker Mayfield's a better quarterback too, because he was the number 1 overall pick, so he should be better than Sam Darnold. But I think that performance was just, it was just crisp, clear, no mistakes, just processed everything, and just led him to a victory. Let him to a comeback. And this is what I kept saying. Yeah. This is what I kept saying about Sam Darnold, right? I kept saying, hey, can he come back? Right? He still hasn't done that, right? We've seen him get flustered this game, get pressure, and he couldn't react to it. First game, Baker does it. First game. So that's really impressive.
Yeah, it was impressive, and I guess just to compare the two, so Baker Mayfield, as I said, 17 for 23, 201 yards, no touchdowns but no interceptions, QBR rating of 94.9. Sam Darnold, on the flip side, 15 for 31, 169 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and a QBR rating of 30.9. Now, with that being said, we talked about Baker, Sam Darnold, as you said, obviously didn't have the greatest game. A lot of his yardage, to be honest, was a lot of those screen passes that they're throwing, which you got to give the offensive coordinator, I think it's Bates, right, on the Jets. He did a good job of scheming because the Cleveland defense has a very aggressive defense. And the thing is with Sam Darnold, too, like, people have to realize he's 21 years old, right? Baker Mayfield's 23. He has more years under his belt, especially in college football. So I know you're not a big Sam Darnold fan.
No, it's not that. Is that that's just no excuses for anybody. That's not. If that the fact that I heard people say, well, Baker has more college experience. Well, that also might be the reason why he's a better quarterback in the long run, and Sam Darnold isn't. See, I have to see something different from Sam Darnold. The biggest question with Sam Darnold is always inconsistency. And through his 3 games, that's what he is, right? So he'll start off hot, and then he'll start slowing down as the middle of the season goes, and then he'll have a few big games, and then he'll simmer down a little bit. But what I saw from Baker Mayfield was just lightning in a bottle, man. It was just just incredible. It was just incredible. Like he just has the it factor, and you know it. You know, he still has to do more. We can't anoint him the king yet, but we'll see. Now let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you think because Baker is starting, you know, he had a good game and he's most likely going to start tomorrow? Do you think now is time for Arizona to bench Sam Bradford and put in Josh Rosen?
Oh, of course. I mean the Cardinals' offense is completely inept. They needed something, and it can't possibly be just what it is right now because you know they just look flat all the way around. Their entire team looks flat, and you know I think the same effect that the Baker Mayfield had on the Browns, I think that could definitely have on the Cardinals. But I'll tell you this: don't you think there's also a reason why they haven't put Josh Rosen in yet? Because if they're so bad,
there is a reason. There is a reason.
What is the reason then?
Most likely, the coach has no idea what he's doing. That's the reason. I mean, that's what you know. And I'm a Hugh Jackson fan as well, but that's the criticism of Hugh Jackson. You know, he can't make the right decision, and this clearly happened, and clearly Baker should be starting because even if he's not the best quarterback right now, which I think he is, right? You could see the upside, and that's what you're still building that team. So Baker should start, and he's ready to play. So there's no. So you know, sometimes we think why. Sometimes the coaches, it's simple. They just don't know what they're doing.
But do you truly believe that Baker Mayfield has the highest upside of all these guys? Even Sam, because here's the one thing. I understand what you're saying.
I always thought it was Baker and Josh Rosen. I thought those were the two best. I thought, like as a Jet fan, I wanted one of those two. So I think those two have similar upside and the best upside for one reason. Those two quarterbacks process things the quickest. And I've said that from day one. It's between the ears. Between the ears, they just process things very quickly. And you saw that. You saw that on Thursday night. And yeah, I think Baker definitely has a chance to be a best quarterback in this draft when it's all said and done.
Okay. Yeah, and I will also just bring this caveat. You know, one thing to also keep into perspective, though, is, I mean, you look at the weapons that Sam Darnold has, which isn't a lot, right? Let's just be honest. He doesn't have much. And in comparison to what Baker has, he's got Jarvis Landry. He's got Callaway, who's ended up being a pretty nice pickup. He's got Njoku. He's got good Carlos Hyde. So he's got weapons, right? And the Jets just don't have that. It's not comparable. Let's be honest about that. And again, he is raw. I do think Sam Darnold is raw, and he's going to have these ups and downs. And I'll just give this little tidbit too, as well. Just for Deshaun Watson, right, which we all can agree is, you know, one of the top talents right now in the NFL quarterback, as far as from the young guys' perspective, right? Last year, his first 2 weeks, his first game against Jacksonville, he went 12 for 23, 102 yards, and a touchdown interception. And his second game versus Cincinnati, he went 15 for 24 for 125 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So if you're using that as a baseline, right, like it's early, right, because we could have said the same exact thing about Deshaun Watson the first 2 weeks last year as well. But nevertheless, it is interesting to kind of dissect their play right now because, you know, it's some of it is definitely telling, but I think some of it as well definitely remains to be seen as far as how these guys develop. So it'll be interesting, and once Josh Rosen gets his chance as well, it'll be even better to kind of compare these three quarterbacks. And well, we haven't even talked about Josh Allen.
We can't. Josh Allen's actually, you know, he's been starting and playing.
But we're not even talking.
But nobody wants to talk about him because his team is getting blown out by the first quarter. That's why.
Yeah, and I guess we'll say that's a good segue into the next topic, which is, you know, we're in week 3 now, and the classic debate of the 2-0 teams and the 0-2 teams, right? And, you know, who's for real and who's not for real. Right now, there's 7 2-0 teams and 7 0-2 teams. And I guess the question is, Mash, and I guess I'll read them down real quick. 2-0 teams, Bengals, Broncos, Jaguars, Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, Buccaneers. And I guess we'll start with the 2-0 teams first. Which of those teams, in your eyes, which of those teams do you think is the most legit of the 2-0 teams right now?
Well, we got I'm not gonna go with the obvious teams. Well, I'm gonna talk about two teams right now, which I think maybe was a little bit under the radar before the season, but I think they are legit, and I think it's the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Cincinnati, they did a good job keeping Marvin Lewis during the offseason. It gave him continuity. Andy Dalton looks good this year. I think he's going to have a big year, and I think they win that division. Miami, more so, I think New England may be declining a little bit, but also that division, having the Jets and the Bills, that could be 3 to 4 wins right there. So I think Miami has a real good chance of clinching a wild card spot this year, especially because they are in a weak division.
Yeah, I'm totally surprised by Miami. I had absolutely no expectations for them to be good this year, and they've definitely surprised me. I think their defense is probably better than I thought they would be as well. And I think on offense, they've just been balanced, right? Like they haven't really done anything spectacular per se, but they've been balanced, and they haven't. Tannehill hasn't really lost any games, which I think he has done quite a bit in the past. So I think Miami, I do agree with you. I'm not so sold on them. I do still have my question marks, and especially when it comes to Tannehill, just historically speaking, I'm not so sure if I'm fully sold on. I'm on the bandwagon yet, but definitely remains to be seen how they do. But I definitely think that's a surprise for me.
Well, let me ask you. I don't really love Tannehill either, but who's the second best quarterback in that division?
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it comes down to. Yeah. And then you have like the AFC North; they might beat each other up. AFC South, AFC West. They all have 3 teams. Every division has 3-4 good teams in the AFC, but AFC East, New York Jets and the Bills, they won't make the playoffs this year. There's no chance. They just don't have the talent. So that's what's really going to help Miami, especially when they win a few of those non-division, non-conference games. I think if they just go 9-7, they could get into playoffs.
Yeah. And I think I'll so obviously like looking at these other teams, like the Rams, obviously, I think the Rams are probably just a clear cut, I would say, number 1 team right now in the NFL. So I'm not even going to get too much into that. I think that's kind of a given. But I will say a team that is interesting to look at 2-0. I'd say the Denver Broncos. And the only reason why I say this is because, I think one formula for success in the NFL is definitely having a dominant defense or a top tier defense and just a solid offense that can run the ball. And I think the Broncos do have that. Now, am I fully sold on them? No, just because it is Case Keenum. And right now, they have a pair of rookie running backs in the backfield as well, especially Phillip Lindsay, who's really been a huge surprise, an undrafted guy who's really broken out. And they also have Royce Freeman as well. So, not to mention Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, right? So they got weapons on offense, and they've been solid on offense. They haven't been spectacular. But that defense, I mean, look, you have Von Miller, obviously, who's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And then you bring in Bradley Chubb, and, to go along with the rest of that defense, like Brandon Marshall and all those guys, they got a lot of talent. And, I could see that formula working. So I think that is a team to look out for in the long term. I think they could definitely do some damage. And, I mean, hey, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, and those weapons, man. I mean, if they can keep it going, how can they not be one of the favorites, right?
Right. No, of course.
I mean, is there any other offense in the NFL right now that's as explosive as them?
But that's why I didn't talk about them, because they're for real. It's just obvious. They're just that explosive. They're that good. They're as long as that defense could just be solid, they're probably going to win that division. Or at least make the playoffs. At least make the playoffs. At the very
at least make the playoffs. But and I think that is a big question mark is that defense. They have given up 65 points, which is definitely. I think what is that? That's fourth. That's fourth in the NFL. So they've given up a lot of points. So it is something to keep an eye on with that. But it's going to be interesting how these pan out. Some of these are definitely surprises, and then some of them like the Rams and the Jaguars, who are also 2-0, are definitely not as much. So interesting to see how that pans out. Now, as far as the 0-2 teams, so I'll just run through this quick as well. The Giants, the Bills, the Texans, the Seahawks, the Raiders, Cardinals, and Lions. So I'll let you go with this first. Which of these teams, or what do you think about these 0-2 teams? Any of them you think they can kind of bounce back, or some of these guys just toast?
I think the most obvious team I want to say Houston. But I don't know if they're better than the Colts with Andrew Luck this year. So they will get better, but I'm not quite sure they're a playoff team. Even Detroit, I think they're going to do better, but again, a brutal division. Seattle, even if they get better, a brutal division. So the best shot of an 0-2 team making the playoffs is probably the Giants. Even no matter how bad they look, they're in the weakest division. And their division isn't weak, but I'm just saying Washington, Dallas, Philly, maybe they have a Super Bowl hangover. They have the best bet. Besides that, it's looking pretty gloom for those 0-2 teams.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in the Steelers in there as well because they're 0-1-1. Because of course they freaking tied the freaking Browns in that game.
Yeah.
I think the Bills are toast, clearly, right? I don't think the Raiders really have much of a chance. The Cardinals, so I don't know what is going on with the Cardinals. I didn't expect them to be great this year, but I mean they've been terrible.
They have a worse coach. There's nothing else to be said.
They scored 6 points this year. 6 in 2 games. That's incredible. How are they possibly this bad?
Coaching. It's coaching. That's all it is. It's coaching. There's nothing else. Bruce Arians was one of the best coaches in the NFL. He was one of the best coaches. They have a lot of talent on that Arizona team. A lot. Especially if you look at their, on the defense, they have. And they still have enough offensive. They still have Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. And O-line isn't horrible. You could do things schematically, but again, they have a defensive coach, and he is not at the skill level that Bruce Arians was, and now you're seeing the decline. You're seeing bad decision making. You're seeing they're not even motivated. I don't know what's going on. There's nothing good to say about them. Schematically, they look bad. They don't look motivated. They just look awful. And the talent is there. So when the talent is there, you gotta look at the coaches.
Yeah, and I wonder almost if they are even playing so bad, even worse than they thought, that's part of the reason why they haven't put Rosen in yet, right? Because, we've talked about this before. When you put in a rookie quarterback in a really tough situation, it can really mess with their psyche. And I wonder if that has something to do with it.
No. You have to let him play, because what's going to happen is it's going to be what happened with Baker Mayfield, right? Everyone's going to, you know what Sam Bradford is. And here's the thing. Sam Bradford has never looked this bad when he's healthy. So his play, for whatever reason, is just not looking good this year. Maybe all the injuries are catching up to him. Maybe he was really never that good. We really don't know, right? Sam Bradford, we still don't know what he is. And they just got to put Rosen in. They just got to put Rosen in. And just let him roll. No matter what. He's going to have ups and downs. Just let him go. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. They just got to kind of just roll the dice and see how that works. Let me ask you this, too. And I know I'm kind of being more of the grim guy here talking about the 0-2 teams. But the Buffalo Bills. Do you think they win a game this year? Because they look atrocious as well.
They'll win a game. They'll win a few games. They'll win. I mean, they gutted their roster, but they'll win a few games. Josh Allen actually, to me, he's looked better than even I expected. He hasn't looked. Again, I don't know if he's an NFL starting quarterback. Probably not. But he still can win you some games, right? He's still can win you some games, even if it's 2-3 games in the season. He could win you that, and I think they will. I don't think they're the worst team in the history. And also, one of the issues is LaShawn McCoy is getting older. I think that's one of the issues as well. So I expected them to have a down season, but they'll win a few games, but be probably the worst or top 3 worst teams in the NFL this year.
Yeah, at minimum. I mean, they're so bad, as this is very public. Their cornerback retired at halftime.
Yeah.
In week 2, Vontae Davis literally went into the locker room at halftime and said, "I'm done."
What do you think about that? Do you think that was like?
Oh my god!
Do you think that was like the wrong thing to do? Because I hear mixed things. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. You don't retire. Listen, even if you're done, right? Like, dude, just wait another hour and a half. Like, you're almost done. Like, it's already halftime. Like, just play 2 more quarters. You really can't put in those 2 more quarters and then finish the game and then be a man and at least tell your teammates and tell your coaches, like, hey, listen, I just don't have it in me anymore. You know what? Yeah, not everybody would still be happy with that, and you still get some backlash, but at least there's some integrity in that, right? Like, he's forever going to be remembered now as the guy who quit at halftime because nobody else has done that. He's literally the first guy that's ever done that.
right.
And he's going to be – that's what he's going to be remembered for. Like, that's his legacy, right? And he actually had some success in his career. He's made Pro Bowls. He was one of the upper echelon corners, I guess you could say, in the NFL one period of time. And not too long ago. It was only a few years ago, right? So it makes no sense to do it. It was selfish. But then again, you have to also think maybe there's more going on up there in his head, right, that we don't know about. Especially with like CTE. I don't want to make assumptions and whatnot, but it was just bizarre. It was crazy.
I think he just got emotional and just like, yo, I'm out. This team sucks. Peace. Forget this. Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I just think that. And then he probably was like, that was a bad decision. And then he looked at his bank account. He was like, yo, whatever. I don't care. And that's it.
Yeah. It was just so ridiculous. But yeah, I think the Bills are probably going to struggle this year pretty bad. But of these 0-2 teams, I'll just say this. I do think the Giants, I agree with you, the Giants do have the best chance to come back. But they have to get that offensive line figured out because if they keep playing like that, with those miscommunication issues, Eli Manning is going to be finished. And it doesn't matter how many weapons they have, and they have a million weapons on offense. They have wide receiver, a tight end, a running back. It doesn't matter if you have 3 seconds to throw and you have a skittish quarterback, because that's what Eli Manning is right now. So I think unless their only shot is to get that offensive line somehow fixed, and I don't have a ton of confidence in that right now, but nevertheless, remains to be seen how that works out. Okay, moving on. So as we said before, it is Saturday, so college football is alive and rolling. So some interesting games already played out today. So kind of go a quick run through right now of some of the results. So Alabama, of course, is the number 1 ranked team in the country. They beat Texas A&M 45-23. Tua Tagovailoa. I hope I said that right.
No, you did, but it's all right.
22 for 30, 387 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dude, these guys are just rolling over everybody. They're
really good. I actually took the spread today. I took A&M, and they covered by like 1 point. And and A&M played good. If you watch the game, they tried. They're just really good. Nick Saban he's just the best coach in the land, and they're just gonna dominate, and they're gonna probably maybe lose one game, maybe, but they're going back to the college football playoffs. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before too. I mean, they always have a ton of talent, but I mean, with a good quarterback, which listen, don't give me all this stuff about McCarron and any of these guys. They have not had a top tier quarterback in forever.
No.
Okay, so this is the first time I think they've really, during the Nick Saban era, have really had a top flight quarterback, and it is scary because their potential is limitless. So it's definitely going to be. I think they're pretty much a lock for the playoffs as well. I just can't fathom them missing it. So they are the top team to beat, bar none, in college football right now. So, yep, they notched another win under their belt in the SEC. They go 4-0. Texas A&M drops to 2-2, and 0-1 in the SEC. So, cover some of the other games. Georgia, number 2 team in the country, beat Missouri 43-29. I think that was pretty much expected. Jake Fromm continues to roll, 13 for 23, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. And yeah, they're still rolling on.
You know Jake Fromm isn't even the best quarterback on that team, right? He's not even the best quarterback. They have this freshman.
Freshman, yeah. I've heard about it, but
ridiculous. He is ridiculous. I don't know why he committed to Georgia. I have no idea. Just to be a backup. He's gonna be the number 1 pick overall one day. Him or the kid from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, one of those guys. They're both.
Who's the quarterback? What's his name?
Trevor Lawrence or the kid from Georgia. That's Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I mean, both those guys, they're gonna light up, and they're both freshmen, and they're gonna be the names to watch for the next 2-3 years in college football. Those 2 guys, they're the future.
Yeah, and I know you're a big Mark Richt fan, but dude, Georgia's looking good for long term, short term and long term. They're just good, man. I know you're a Rick fan, but I think they were better after him.
Well, it's not a hard job to win at, right? Georgia. So yeah. What Smart has to do, what Rick happened is that after a while it became kind of stale, for both. Yeah. Both of them. It's not that he was a bad coach, but there's a time frame where you have to win a national championship. That's the bottom line. If you can't do it in that 7-8 year period, it's just going to become harder and harder. So Kirby Smart has that period, right? He has to win a championship within a certain time frame. If he doesn't, then no matter how many SEC championship games he goes to or what he's done in the past, then he might end up in the same situation. But right now it looks really good. The most impressive thing with Kirby Smart is not the defense, it's the offense. Considering he's a defensive coach. And he's recruiting the best quarterback in the country every year, and I don't understand how he does that. So it was Jacob Eason, then it was Jake Fromm, and now it's Justin Fields. Eason transferred to Washington. But if he keeps getting those 5-star quarterbacks, and they keep being the number 1 quarterback in the nation, he's gonna win a title at some point.
Yeah, and I think they're definitely on the verge. I don't think they're there yet, but I think they're on the verge of closing in on Bama as far as like recruiting talent and just talent overall. So yeah, interesting to see how they continue on the season. But yeah, moving along, Clemson, number 3 team in the country, stays undefeated 4-0. They beat Georgia Tech 49-21. Ohio State also kept rolling. Number 4 team in the country, they stay undefeated 49-6 over Tulane. Notre Dame, who God we both despise, ended up beating Wake Forest 56-27. Pretty much expected there. West Virginia, number 12 team in the country, quietly then undefeated 3-0, beat Kansas State 35-6. Will Greer, by the way.
I was going to ask you, what do you think about him? What do you think about him and did you know about his brothers too? Like they're really into social media. What do you think about that whole?
I don't. I haven't. I'll be honest with you. I haven't really watched West Virginia too much.
Yeah,
it's West Virginia. But I do think he is. Who's the quarterback that was in West Virginia a couple years ago that just tore it up? I forgot his name, but he reminds me a lot.
Are you talking about Geno Smith? Is that
no, God, not Geno Smith.
Because he did tear it up. If you watch Geno Smith in college, he looked ridiculous and looked insane, and he would hit every throw. But
Yeah. No, I forgot what the guy's name was. Either way, he does fit the bill of those big time throwers at West Virginia that they've had over the years. He's looking good, and he's definitely an underrated guy. And if they keep rolling like this and keep putting him 25 for 35, 356 yards, 5 touchdowns, dude. They stay undefeated. He's going to be in the conversation for Heisman, right? I mean, especially if they go undefeated in the Big 12.
yeah, if they go undefeated, there's a lot of good teams in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And also a game to watch is that Texas Tech Oklahoma State game. Tech lost their first game, but they've been playing good. They've been going, and they have this freshman who like lit it up, and he broke some records, like every Texas Tech quarterback does. And he's a true freshman, so he looks to be upping the level of Texas Tech's overall play, and that winner, I think, we'll see after that game, the pecking order in the Big 12.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And so just kind of cover also 2 upsets that we had today. Purdue, who was 1-2 coming to this game, beat Boston College, the 23rd ranked team in the country, 30-13. Yeah. And my boy, I told you guys about Rondell Moore for 8 receptions, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pretty interesting upset there. I know it's a little bit of an under-radar game, but interesting. Listen, I'm telling you guys right now, Rondell Moore is going to be a superstar by next year. And you better be tracking him by the time he gets to the NFL and make sure you somehow get him in fantasy because this guy is a stud.
Well, Purdue was always going to win this game because this was the first time Boston College had been ranked in 10 since Matt Ryan. Yeah. So they were going to lose this game. And Boston College actually does have a really good team, and they have a really good quarterback. His name is Anthony Brown. Legit. They have really good players on that Boston College team. But I think they just probably celebrated too hard this week, and Purdue was desperate for a win, and they're 0-3, but they're much better than an 0-3 team. So this was always a trap game for Boston College, and congrats to Purdue on a good win, and congrats to Jeff Brom because he needed this win. He couldn't go 0-4.
Yeah, and this is a good correct myself. I said they were 1-2. Yeah, they were 0-3 coming into this game, and yeah, they definitely needed this win. And Brom, man, your boy. That's your boy. He got his first win of the season, so good for him. Another upset. This is the biggest upset of the year. Virginia Tech is the 13th ranked team in the country coming in today. Yeah. They lost to Old Dominion, 49-35. What the hell?
I have no idea, man. What's funny is though, I was gonna place a bet on that game, and then I was just like, I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't. Just because, I don't know. Just Old Dominion, they're a new D1 team, and sometimes there's just weird games that happen every year in college football, and this is just one of them. There's no explanation.
This had to be hey, we're the 13th ranked team in the country, and we're just going to overlook this game and look on to next week, right? That's the only explanation. I don't think Old Dominion has nearly as much talent as Virginia Tech.
Especially defensive talent.
I know.
That's the crazy part because it's like, how'd they score 49 points on you? It's not like it was like a 27-21. It was like, how'd they put 49 on you? That's what I don't understand.
So interesting part about this, going into the fourth quarter, they were actually down. I think it was 28 to 21. And Old Dominion put up 28 points in the fourth quarter. What? Are you kidding me? How do you blow that? And it's sad because I feel like Virginia Tech was kind of on its way back. Yeah. And this just killed all the momentum. So definitely fortunate for them. But, hey, congratulations to Old Dominion. That's probably the biggest one in the program's history. Yeah. So big props to them and their fan base. So yeah, congrats, and it's first big upset of the year. So good stuff. Moving on to talk basketball. So we haven't touched too much on the NBA yet, but now that we're getting into the end of September, basketball season is on the horizon, and we already have our first big piece of news so far.
Are you making me talk Knicks right now? You gonna make me
No,
talk
wait. We have to only talk. We can't only talk Knicks because then we're just gonna get mad. So we're gonna avoid that, right? Because that's gonna make me mad. That's gonna make you mad. But obviously, it's hard to avoid the Knicks completely. But the big story so far, it came out a few days ago, was Jimmy Butler. So Jimmy Butler, and strange timing, right? End of September, you think in the off season you'd bring this up. So he asked to be traded, and when you think of their team where you have Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, they definitely have the talent to be a pretty competitive team, right? So this is strange. I definitely was surprised by this, and I was surprised by the timing. But the three teams in particular, and correct me if I'm wrong right now, that he is asked to be traded to, was the Clippers, the Nets, which I have no idea why he wants to go to the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you can clue me in, but I can't figure that at all. And our beloved New York Knicks. What's your thought on this? Do you think, first off, do you think the Knicks are a realistic possibility in this? And two, what do you think is the most likely destination for Jimmy Butler?
Well, the Knicks are definitely a realistic possibility. Definitely. There's no question. They're in the running. From what I hear, the rumor is that the Clippers are his top choice, and that makes sense. Just organizationally, I'm sure he wants to go with Jerry West, and be under that tutelage and Doc Rivers. And so I'm sure that's his first choice, and they have the cap space to pull it off, and they have some pieces they could move and trade and make a trade. In terms of making a trade, the Knicks aren't going to trade. The Knicks will not trade. Brooklyn does not have the pieces, and Clippers can offer something interesting to him. They could potentially offer a package with maybe Tobias Harris and Lou Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then get Jimmy Butler back. That won't hurt them because they won't re-sign Tobias regardless if they trade for Jimmy Butler. And they would have to move Lou Williams' contract anyway to make space, because if they get Jimmy Butler, they're going to want to get other free agents as well. So I think the Clippers are the most realistic possibility. But it's also not just where Jimmy Butler goes, but who goes with him. I think that's the big question.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the big thing in NBA, right? It's like these package deals with multiple players. It's almost never about just one guy. It's usually about multiple guys going to one team, one destination. And it's almost like colluding together, right? To just create like a new super team. And obviously LeBron's the one who started that trend, when he went to Miami. And so, yeah, I do agree with that. And the Knicks is an interesting possibility just because, I think if he does go to the Knicks, I think it would be his team. And he is in the middle of more of the elder statesman because he's 29. He's been in the league for a bit now. And he's got young talent there, right? So I think that could be an interesting destination. But I do think the Clippers, I agree, are the most likely destination. And I guess that is also kind of is a good segue into the next topic, which is, the other guy that also is rumored to go to the Clippers and potentially go is Kawhi Leonard, right? And, one, do you think that's, if they can pull that off, I mean, you look at the LA sports landscape, I mean, that would be crazy for LA. I mean, I feel like they've been like the afterthought for sports for so long. And then all of a sudden you have the Lakers with LeBron. And then you have Jimmy Butler with Kawhi Leonard. And then you have the Rams. And even the Chargers are good this year. I mean, what do you think about that, man? That would be quite – if they could pull that off, I mean, that would be crazy.
So this is my prediction. I think this is the whole scenario. I'm gonna predict. I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen.
Oh,
I think they're gonna trade for Jimmy Butler. They're gonna tell Jimmy Butler opt in for $20 million because he has one more year. They'll say opt in and we'll extend you after you opt in. So after he opts in, the Clippers will basically only contract they would have to trade is Danilo Gallinari. So they would have to package one of their young pieces and get that contract off the books. So once they get that contract off the books, what they will be able to do is they'll have Jimmy Butler opt in, have Kawhi Leonard sign a contract, and also Kyrie Irving will go there as well. That is I think the scenario that is most likely to happen. And then they will also have a good young core by next year. So I think that's the most likely scenario.
Do you think they can pull that off this late though? I mean,
I don't know.
Training camp's coming up now.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
on.
I don't know. I mean, see, that's the thing, right? The biggest question, which I don't have the answer for, is does Jimmy Butler get traded or does he go into free agency? That changes everything. That changes the entire landscape. I also think there's this rumor that Knicks can sign two max players next season. That's not true. If you look at their cap space, they have too many guys under contract that they would have to move. They have to move Courtney Lee. Even if they waive Noah's contract, it will go down from 19 million to 7 million. Sorry, 6.5 million. But that will still be counted against the cap. And you have to also move Lance Thomas. So there's just a lot of dudes you gotta move. So a lot of dudes. And also what's gonna happen with the Porzingis contract, right?
Yeah.
So if Porzingis' contract goes to a max before the end of the year, then that contract's gonna be counted on the books. What a smart GM would do is that they would throw in, hey, go accept the qualifying offer through free agency. So it'll be an $8 million cap hit instead of the $35 million cap hit. That's what Stan Van Gundy did with Andre Drummond a few years ago. That's what the Knicks need to do. If they don't do that, there's no way they could get 2-star free agents without dumping a lot of salaries and probably having to move one of the young players like Frank or somebody.
Yeah, it's it's a lot. It's a lot that needs to happen, and it's definitely.
And as a Knicks fan, do we even want Kyrie Irving? Because what's going to happen to Kyrie Irving 3 years down the road, or not even 3 years, 2 years, not even 2 years? What's going to happen to him this year?
Yeah,
he's going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt. He's like Amari. He's like Amari Stoudemire, and we love Amari Stoudemire because he always gave it his all. Kyrie's going to give it his all, but it doesn't matter if you give it your all if you don't play.
Yeah, and can I also just going back to the Clippers? Can I ask a question? How in the hell is Danilo Gallinari making $20 million a year? What?
Well, one, that's probably not the worst contract in the NBA, but the year before, he signed he was a big free agent that year. And he signed a 3-year contract. It wasn't the worst contract in the world, but again, that's a dude who's got him with the injury bug. So, I think we've seen the best days are past Danilo Gallinari. He'll never be better than he was yesterday.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's definitely overpaid.
Yeah. Well, I guess plenty. I guess you're right. You can make that case for like half the NBA. So many guys are getting overpaid now, even guys that are kind of secondary, tertiary.
Courtney Lee's making $12 million. You know, Noah's $20 million. Noah has done nothing.
That's
Noah
true.
has done absolutely nothing.
You got me beat on that.
Gallinari at least could shoot a 3 here and there. Noah has done nothing at all. Like nothing.
Yeah. You got me beat on the Noah deal. That is definitely for sure.
That is the worst.
That is the worst. That probably is.
It was the worst contract in the NBA since he signed it.
Yeah.
Since the day he signed it.
And I'll give you credit. You did say that was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I did. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Obviously terrible.
Yeah, but I will say this: I think it would be great for the NBA if the Clippers can somehow make this work, where they get Butler and Kawhi Leonard on that team. When you have LA and you have the Lakers, obviously LeBron, that's going to be a big ticket team for this year. And then if you could get the Clippers to kind of get Butler and Kawhi Leonard there, I think that would really, I think it would be great for the NBA, great for the sport. Of course, it would be great for SoCal. Of course, me being selfish in that aspect, but yeah, would definitely interested to see how this pans out. A little late in the game, but we'll see how this all sorts itself out. Okay, moving on. Fantasy football. So, Monster, another wild week in football, especially in fantasy football, that is. I'm sorry. And top scorers for this past week, in week 2, freaking Blake Bortles, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Patrick Mahomes. I don't even know what to say. Another crazy week of unexpected success for guys that I guess a lot of us didn't fully expect coming in.
Well, in the first, I don't know if you remember, the first show I stated quarterbacks would give huge contribution this year. And that's what we're seeing. Quarterbacks are just lighting up the NFL. From the top quarterbacks to guys you never thought would be that good, everyone's just tearing it up.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I would say definitely some unexpected success as well. I think Blake Bortles, I guess just because the Jaguars are just such a good team and well coached, I think there was always that possibility. But obviously, as we talked about in last 2 weeks, really, Fitzpatrick and Mahomes, just total surprises. But they continued this success in week 2. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that, if that can continue moving forward. So what from week 2 did kind of surprise you in general? What caught your eye?
Continuity, right? Like Fitz did it again. He did it again. What caught my eye? Did you see what he wore after the game? That's it. Amazing. That is what caught that was one of the best press conferences I've ever seen. And you have to wonder, right? And he was a free agent in our league this week.
Yeah.
No one picked him up. And you have to think, after you watch the chemistry he has with his teammates, maybe he will do it for the whole season. Who knows? We'll see. It's possible. It's possible now.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know what your thoughts on this are. I can't possibly see Jameis Winston getting that job back. So if you have Jameis Winston stashed on your bench for whatever reason, just drop him because I can't. I know you. Deshaun Jackson actually came out and said that he actually prefers that Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of keeps the job, and that tells you all you need to know, right? When the veteran on that team comes out and states that he wants his guy to stay, and you saw it during the press conference, as you said, he was wearing Deshaun's gear, which is he basically looked like Conor McGregor out there, and I can't imagine him giving that job back up.
When was the last time in the NFL or in fantasy you had this type of situation where the franchise quarterback was talked about being benched so early on in the season? Like, it's becoming like, oh yeah, Jameis ain't gonna start. Like, when was the last time you saw this?
It's almost unheard of. And I think the main reason why is because it was self-inflicted. He did it to himself. He's not out because of an injury. He's out because he freaking got suspended because he's an idiot. He assaulted was it an Uber driver? Like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, so he did this to himself. He's been doing this to himself since college when he stole those crab legs from some groceries, some market in Florida, in Tallahassee. So he's been doing this his whole career. His immaturity is costing him, and now it's unfortunate because, hey man, Fitzmagic's playing lights out. So I don't know if he'll get his job back, but
also one more thing. I think Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins. You're like, all right, he's now you realize, oh, he's even in a better situation, and he's actually a good quarterback, and with all the talent around him, he's gonna even be a better quarterback.
Yeah, and I think because the Vikings did lose Pat Shurmur to the Giants, and I think Pat Shurmur did have at least a part to do with his success. The Vikings' success, that is, last year. And, you thought that, he's because people weren't even sold on Kirk Cousins when he was in the Redskins, right? So coming in, getting a huge contract, going to the Vikings with a new coordinator, you're not sure how that's going to pan out. I think it was, people weren't fully sold on, I wasn't fully sold on the Vikings and Cousins either, but I mean, he's looked the part, man. He's looked the part, and obviously against the Packers, put up 425 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, he's looking the part. He hasn't fallen off at all. If anything, as I said, he looks good, and it is because he's got weapons too, right? He's got Diggs, he's got Thielen, he's got Rudolph. So
Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook.
He's got a running back and the defense. That defense is just really good. Don't underestimate Kirk Cousins. He was always a good quarterback. So now he's just in a great situation.
Yeah, and I think it's also a kind of the next point as far as like the passing on of the torch, right, from the old quarterbacks to this new generation of QBs, and it's gonna be so interesting to see how these guys pan out in the future, right, with a lot of these younger guys, because there's so many of them now, right? I mean, there's so many good quarterbacks out there that it may change the NFL as a whole, right? Like we could see 4 or 5 years where games are just 30, 40 points all the time, each team scoring, and it's going to be awesome to track going forward. But name you brought up, interesting, Dalvin Cook. So a good segue into our next topic, which is injuries. There have been quite a bit of running backs in particular that have gotten nicked up. And, one thing in fantasy football for sure that is always of, I guess, a strategy to be used is the handcuff, the infamous running back handcuff. And there's been a lot of talk over the past couple of years that, it's not really worth it per se because you have limited space on your bench. And, is a handcuff really important, right? Is it really worth it to have a handcuff for your running back? But, I mean, you think about, just to throw out a few names, obviously Ajayi is out this week. You had Fournette that was out last few weeks. Dalvin Cook is actually out this week as well. I think, in my opinion, I think it's more precautionary because they're facing the Bills. So they just think that it's kind of like almost like an JV versus varsity type situation where the win's kind of a lock, so it's not worth it for some injury. But nevertheless, he's out, right? Joe Mixon, McKinnon is obviously out for the year. So a lot of guys got injured. And of course, even non-injury, right? Le'Veon Bell, who thought that was going to happen? And guys that kind of went for the handcuff and took invested capital in James Conner. I mean, that's paying off huge. So what is your opinion on the handcuff? Do you think that's once again back to the level of really high importance in fantasy football? And do you think that guys that do invest high capital need to make sure that they have handcuffs on their team?
Well, it depends, right? It depends on your situation right now as a fantasy owner, right? If you have the roster space, if your team is looking weak and you need to add depth, then it's a good idea. In general, I don't mind if someone gets a handcuff for the reasoning, hey, I think this player is going to get injured, or the starter's injury prone, so this is a good guy to have. We've seen it work out, especially with the Matt Breida situation and Jerick McKinnon, and others. It works out that way. I don't like getting a handcuff if you get him because you think he's going to steal a touchdown from the starter, because then it's just going to be a lineup nightmare week to week of when you should start the touchdown vulture or even the starter, right? The starter of the guy who's getting handcuffed. So it depends, but generally it depends on your reasoning and your logic. Then a handcuff can be good.
Yeah, and I think it also depends, how much depth you can at least project to have on your team. Because if you're not going to have your handcuff, you got to make sure you have a backup plan to go to at running back, right? Because that's also really important. So, and again, that's part of fantasy football. Is I think trends change. And, things will go one way for a couple of years and they'll kind of reverse itself. And, I think we're seeing a little bit more brand name running backs kind of get nicked up early in the season. Usually you'll see this kind of in the middle of the year, but it's already like we're week 3 and a number of guys are already out. But yeah, I think it definitely depends on your situation, depends on you if you're on your bench. I think especially if you're taking a guy in the first 2 rounds, especially in the first round, right? I think it probably is worth it. because you're investing so much capital. But nevertheless, there's no, I guess, straightforward way to handle that situation. But interesting to see how this the injury bug keeps up, and have a lot of you guys scrambling for backup options on the waiver wire. Because let's be honest, man, there's not a lot. If you're in any of your leagues, you take a look at your running back situation in free agency. It is not. It's pretty sparse. And I guess the question is too, what do you do with that situation, right? Like if you are you don't have a backup plan at running back, and your guy is injured, what do you do?
Be patient. Be patient. Let it come to you. Be patient. Or be aggressive, too. You could be aggressive. Make a trade. I don't know. I mean, there's not one solution to a problem, right? So you just have to wait and see. You have to weigh out all your options, right? Sometimes you have to be patient. Sometimes you have to make a trade. It also depends on what week you're in, because there's more injuries to come, right? Now you're going to be talking, now the handcuffs might start getting injured as well, right? The backup running back. So now you have to get the handcuff of the handcuff. So there's a lot of things in play.
Yeah, and that's also where, depending on your league setup, if you have a waiver point system, or if you have a waiver wire pecking order system, you have to be very cognizant of that, right? Like if you just want to pick up a guy in waivers just because, maybe he has got a shot, in some other position, you got to keep into account that you may at one point need a running back, right, to pick up, or you don't know, if your running back situation is iffy because of his health, etc. So all things to keep into consideration. But yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to track moving forward. All right, so moving on to our infamous Fab Five recommendations for fantasy football. Mash, I will let you go first. Who are your 5 recommendations?
All right.
Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense. Give it to me.
All right. Quarterback, I'm going Deshaun Watson. I think this is the week he breaks out. I don't know if you heard, there was a principal who made a racist comment superintendent made a racist comment. That, even subconsciously, that might just motivate him, because the comment was also, you can't trust him. So it doesn't matter what Deshaun says, that's what everyone's talking about right now. And I think he's just going to go out and ball out. And I think he's going to have a big game this week.
Okay.
Yeah. At running back, I got Kerryon Johnson. I think this week, he gets in the end zone. I think that's going to be a high scoring game too. Both are bad defenses, Detroit and New England. They don't have great defenses. So I expect a lot of points in that game. Wide receiver, Tyler Lockett. Him and Wilson have good chemistry. I think he's his go-to guy as long as Baldwin is out. Tight end, O.J. Howard. I like him. He's starting to improve week by week. It looks like he's going to be better this year than last year. And defense, I got a little bit of a surprise. I went a little wild card. It's because I just can't stand Mitch Trubisky. I'm going Cardinals defense. I think this is the week, because, things change week to week in NFL, right? Any given Sunday. It doesn't matter what happened the first 2 weeks. Third week could be totally different. I think this year, Cardinals defense, at least they cause a lot of turnovers, because Trubisky throws an interception every game. So, at the very least, that will happen. Could even see them get in the end zone. So, we'll see.
Man, that Arizona Cardinals pick is outside the box, because I would never.
Really, but, you see these things in fantasy where, this team just does something totally opposite week 3 or 4 than they did their first few weeks. It happens. Things change quickly in the NFL.
That is for sure. And, I mean, obviously, from what we've seen so far, it's been a lot of unexpected things.
I think this is the worst quarterback they're going up against so far, right? And I just think Trubisky's really bad. I've said it every show, and I will continue to say
yeah, you do.
He's really bad, and Cardinals defense will take advantage of that.
I'll say for sure Trubisky's probably not ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but I think Matt Nagy actually does a really good job of masking his deficiencies.
He does.
So he's got pre-planned plays, and that's why they're at least somewhat effective Their offense, you have to admit, is somewhat effective.
But you can't mask deficiencies 16 games a year. That's the thing. You could do it for a few games, but eventually everything ends up happening the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Man, okay. So yeah, the Arizona matchup stuff is something keep an eye on for that. And if you come out on top of that one, you are going to be definitely known as a genius for that one. Okay, so I'll go with my Fab Five, my starters that I have for this upcoming week. I have Kirk Cousins. We talked about him before versus the Bills. I mean, what else do I need to say? The Bills. The Bills are a disaster right now, both on offense and on defense. And I think, obviously, Kirk Cousins and the Vikings are rolling right now. That offense is clicking. I think both Diggs and Thielen are going to have big games, especially that Dalvin Cook is out. I think that'll definitely cause them to throw the ball a little bit more. And I think it's going to be – I think Kirk Cousins is a lock to have a big game against the Bills. Unless they get up too quickly and they end up running the ball.
That could happen.
That could happen. That could happen. But, I think he's at least locked in for a very solid game. So going on to my running back pick, same exact reason. Latavius Murray on the Vikings versus the Bills. Obviously, as I said, the Bills' defense is terrible. I think, part of the reason why Cousins might not have a huge game is because, they may get up pretty quickly and may want to run the ball. And I think it's perfect for Murray. One, obviously, I think they'll be able to run the ball all over the Bills. But two, Dalvin Cook is injured. That is a big deal. And he's going to take the lion's share of the carries. So I think he's going to have a big game versus the Bills. At a wide receiver, I hate to say this, but I have Will Fuller of the Texans against the Giants defense. And the main reason I have this is that Eli Apple is out. And right now they have B.W. Webb, who's going to be covering Will Fuller because Janoris Jenkins will probably be trailing DeAndre Hopkins, which means Will Fuller will probably have a big game. B.W. Webb is not good, I'll be completely honest with you. Even the Cowboys game, once Eli Apple went out, Dak Prescott was just going after him and was having completion after completion. And he's definitely the weak part of that defense right now. So I think Will Fuller will have a big game versus the Giants. At tight end, Trey Burton versus Arizona. Trey Burton has definitely been a little bit of a disappointment so far. There's a lot of hype of him going into this year. But he did have a touchdown last week, and he did have was getting more targets at least from Mitch Trubisky. And even the first week, there's a huge play that they're talking about, which they're ripping Mitch Trubisky on, where Trey Burton was wide open in the end zone, and he just didn't throw the ball to him. So I think so far it's been, obviously, as you said, a little bit more of Mitch Trubisky's the downside of him just not really being ready right now. But I think Matt Nagy will still put a lot of effort into getting him the ball, especially this week against Arizona. They're allowing 14 PPR points per game to tight ends, so I think it's a perfect matchup for Trey Burton to kind of have a little bit of a breakout game, and I think he'll do well. And for my defense, I will take the Baltimore Ravens versus the Broncos. I know I was praising the Broncos before, but I think the Baltimore Ravens actually have a pretty good defense this year, and I think they will be able to keep Case Keenum in check, and I think that they'll be able to limit the running backs. Maybe not completely, but I think they'll do enough to kind of keep it a low-scoring game. And I think the Broncos will kind of play into that, and it'll probably be a little bit of a defensive battle. And I think that works well in the Ravens' favor as far as from a fantasy perspective. So I think the Ravens are a good streaming pick unless you have another elite defense on your team. Okay, awesome. So moving on as we start to continue to wrap up the show. Moneyline bets, MASH. Last week, first off, tell me how you did. And then
all right, so with my formula, the way I do my formula, I'm going to explain to people. So it's $10 every game, unless you if you pick the favorite, then the winning bet has to equal the net profit has to be $10. Okay, so according to that, last week you would have risked $120, and you would have got a $40 profit, net profit, which would have been a 33% gain, which is not too bad, which is pretty good.
Send him a tip, man. Venmo tip. Venmo,
Right.
yo, Max, give me your hash. Give me your Venmo handle, bro.
Yeah, it's actually my name spelled wrong. It's my full name, and it's just my last name is spelled wrong. So it's like HASSN, something like that. Yeah, I don't even know. But people find me and they pay me, so it's good. Yeah, so we're gonna go into. So we got some games going right now and today. So I got 5 college football games and five NFL games. So what I'm picking Kentucky on the money line, and they are plus 315 underdogs. Meaning if you bet 10, you'll win 31. Texas Tech over Oklahoma State money line, which is plus 475. And if you win 10, you win 48. I got Oregon money line. They're pretty close to even, but they're plus 115 underdogs in that game. I got Arizona State, Washington. I got the over on that. Wisconsin, they're only 3-point favorites against Iowa away after what happened last week, and I got them on the spread, picking them on the spread, and picking them on the money line. Picking them on the money line is minus 160. And then I got Florida, picking Florida on the spread. They're 3.5-point favorites. And then, so we'll see. Last week I went 6 out of 10. So I got 3 right in college football and 3 right in NFL. Going on to NFL, I'm picking the Colts on the money line. They're plus 230. They're underdog, plus 230 underdogs. Saints, plus 100 underdogs on the money line. I'm picking Baltimore on the spread. I think they're going to destroy Denver tomorrow. I think they're going to blow them out. They're 5-point favorites in that. I'm going to pick Baltimore. And I got Detroit upsetting the Patriots on the money line, plus 250. I think Detroit. Yeah, man. I think they're at home. I think Patricia knows them. I think New England isn't as good as it used to be because of that defense. Tom Brady's also 1 year older. And another game, I like the Chargers also winning. And their money line on them plus 255.
So I'm assuming you're not buying the Josh Gordon hype?
No, I am, but it's gonna take a few weeks, right? It's gonna take a week. I mean, here's the Josh Gordon. How crazy is his value this year? Went from up, down, and it's the highest it's ever been. This is the same thing that's been going on with Josh Gordon the last 3-4 years. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing considering how little he's played in like the past 3 years. I think it's like 5 games or 6, or maybe 5 or 6 games or something like that. But it's so low. But I think it's almost unheard of to hear about a player that he's pretty much the penny stock version of an NFL fantasy football player.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, that'll be interesting to watch for that game. I think it'll have a big impact on the result as well. All right, man. So moving on to our last segment, which is the Giants-Jets predictions. Now, we already made the Jets, of course, played on Thursday night. We made our predictions. You think you had the Jets losing 27-17. I had the Jets losing 20-13, and pretty close on that one, actually, because they ended up losing 21-17. Now, for the Giants, I guess I'll go first. And I think they are on the road in Houston. The Giants are without Olivia Vernon again, and they're going to be without Eli Apple, which I think that's going to be that's kind of a big impact because they don't have a lot of depth at cornerback, and B.W. Webb is going to be, I think he's going to get picked on by Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller, and I think the Giants, unfortunately, will lose this game. I think it'll be a little bit of a higher scoring game. I think I'll probably put it at 27-20. And I think, unfortunately, the Giants are going to drop to 0-3. This has definitely been a really disappointing start. The offensive line has been terrible, and I think all hell will probably break loose. I hope I'm wrong again, but that's my objective prediction for the Giants in Houston. Who do you have winning this game?
Well, I think this is going to be one of those games where Giants look a lot better, but they still end up losing.
Yeah.
I also think that I just think Deshaun is going to come out so motivated this week, and he's just going to light it up. You know, he's going to do video game stuff. I think the final score is going to be 38-24. Texans. Yeah, I think it's going to be a high scoring game, but the Giants defense Giants offense will look better, so people will be like, yeah, even though we lost, you know, at least the offense will be looking good. So it still will be 0-3, but I think they will look better this week.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but unfortunately, I think that's probably what's most likely going to happen. But again, you never know, man. Week 3, a lot of times in the NFL, things just click together and things go complete opposite what you think they'd go, right?
Well, I know we made the Jets prediction, but there's some news coming out right now. I don't know if you know. There's a report that's saying that Todd Bowles' job isn't safe. SNY's
really?
Yeah. That Christopher Johnson is not a fan. So, and that's why he didn't endorse him after week 1, which is surprising, because I still think on Thursday night they still outplayed the level of talent that's on that team. So, and they still had a good game. I know they lost to the Browns, but people don't realize Browns are a good team this year with a lot of talent. So, I don't know how I feel about this, but this is the report coming out right now.
Seriously?
Yeah.
With the talent on offense, and you have a 21-year-old quarterback,
yeah,
you're gonna already start spreading. Oh, that's just ridiculous.
And it's not
that's
bad.
so Jets, man. That's so Jets.
It's crazy because, like, I'm not the biggest Sam Darnold fan, but under his tutelage, I think he's been grooming Sam Darnold the right way for him to succeed. Like, I don't think what Sam Darnold has done, I don't think you would expect any more from him. You know, yeah, he didn't have a great game last game, but I think if you get rid of him, it's going to hurt his future development. That's what you have to look at. Do you really want Sam Darnold to have a second head coach in 2 years? That's always when things start falling apart for quarterbacks, right? And they start having trouble, you know?
When you're the path that they've taken the last few, like especially the last year, last offseason, coming into this year, I mean, it's the long game perspective, right? So based upon what you're doing right now in these few games, first 4 weeks or first 6 weeks, like who cares? It's just about if your team is progressing and your franchise quarterback is progressing. That's all that matters. Like, to me, that's just so short-sighted if they end up turning on the heat on Todd Bowles' seat. But I mean,
right, and that's what makes a team like the Bengals smart, because they keep a guy like Marvin Lewis, because they're like, we know he's a good coach. We know we just have to give him a little bit more talent, and it's not just on him. So if we do that, we can succeed. And I think what mistakes owners and executives make a lot of time is that they're trying to put a blame on someone why something's not happening right now. But sometimes patience is the best course of action.
Yeah, definitely. And most of those teams that do have patience, I think, do end up having the most success. And I think Shad Khan is one of those guys, right? He really had patience with his franchise when he took over the Jaguars, and he built his team correctly, got the right guys in place, and they're letting him do the thing. And look at them now. One of the best.
He didn't fire David Caldwell either. He kept him. He's just saying, yo, you need a little bit more help, but I like what you did so far. I think you no matter what other people are saying, you have brought in good talent. And he definitely did. A lot of this is David Caldwell. It's not just Tom Coughlin.
Yeah.
So, good move by him, you know, keeping that consistency, and you see where the Jaguars are now.
Yeah, for sure. So that is definitely a story to watch moving forward. I hope for your sake, or Jets fans' sake, that they don't overreact to these first four or 8 weeks, whatever it is. But I guess we'll see. So excited week coming up this weekend. Very important NFL Sunday for a lot of teams, including my Giants, and a lot of the other 0-2 teams out there as well. Just a quick heads up, guys. The next week, we do have a big UFC week. UFC 230 is coming up, and we have the Khabib-Conor fight. We'll have a special guest on for that, and we'll go over the fight card for Saturday's fights. And yeah, man, it was great chatting once again. and enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your football, the rest of your football Saturday and Sunday, and we'll do this again next week.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, man. Take it easy. Y'all have a good weekend.
Bye.
Hustling, 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 hustling. Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling.